Football, every game on the board podcast. This is the first section here, one of three sections with our first guest up, MidMajor Matt, at MidMajor Matt on Twitter. MidMajor Matt, how you feeling, man?
Doing well, Drew. It's a little frustrating dealing with the postponements and the cancellations of the games, but we're moving forward. It affects me as MidMajor Matt more than it does the other people because it's mostly the non-Power 5 games, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is true. And actually one of the non-Power 5, or maybe they're making a case to be a Power 5 here, talking about an AAC matchup here. 389, 390, top of the board, guys. We got UCF at ECU. We're talking Central Florida, versus East Carolina. 77 being the total, with UCF laying 4 touchdowns, Matt, on the road.
By the way, I highly recommend, when fans are actually allowed, I highly recommend going to a game at East Carolina. It's a very nice stadium, solid fan base, decent tailgating. I went a Thursday night to watch Temple play them, and very much enjoyed what East Carolina had in terms of atmosphere. We're not going to enjoy this game. There will be no fans at this game. Last year, UCF won 41-28. They were up 35-6 at halftime. This is a mismatch in so many different ways. UCF last week beat Georgia Tech 49-21. They racked up over 600 yards. They did give up 400 yards themselves, so there are some things they can work on defense. 5 turnovers forced last week. UCF, since 2016, has forced 86 turnovers and has a plus 40 margin. There's a lot to like here. Dylan Gabriel, the offense is working. They've got the speed going as usual. And then you've got East Carolina. Very first game of the season. They're 4-12 against the spread as an underdog of 21.5 to 31 points. They've got 8 starters back on offense. Holton Ahlers, who I know we've talked about on this show, at quarterback. 5 starters on defense, and all 3 of their specialists, the kicker, the punter, the long snapper. To me, I look, with no fans, I'm not as worried about these big spreads. But me personally, as we've talked about, because we talked about the SMU North Texas game, the SMU Texas State game. And I said, yeah, SMU is clearly the better team, but I just don't feel comfortable laying that many points. This could be the same situation here. It's UCF coming off an ACC game, playing a crappy East Carolina team. To me, what I would look at is potentially the first half here, because I think we're going to get a focused effort out of UCF early. First game for East Carolina, they're going to have the jitters. They're going to have the issues that any team would have in their first game. So to me, I'm looking at UCF in the first half in this one.
Matt, talking about the total in this one, it's open 76 up to 77, and I want no interest in betting the under, man. It would be over or pass. Any quick opinions on that?
Well, to me, it's how interested is UCF. UCF could put up 77 themselves, but I don't think they will. And will East Carolina? Look, East Carolina's going to play with a little bit of pace. Mike Houston wants to play with some pace, wants to spread things out a little bit. So to me, I'm not going to play the total. I wouldn't hate you if you did either side. Like, I can make a case for the under, in which East Carolina scores like 10 points and it's like a 57-10 game. Or it's the over, because there's a lot of possessions and East Carolina backdoors it late, scoring some touchdowns when UCF has their third stringers in.
And taking a little bit of step down in talent, next game up here, 391, 392, Georgia State at Charlotte. We're talking the Charlotte 49ers here at home, with the Panthers of Georgia State laying a field goal on the highway, 58 being the total in this one, Matt.
I don't quite get the line for this game. Just under 1,100 fans will be there. So there'll be a little bit of an atmosphere there. Georgia State last week lost that tough game to Lafayette, 34-31. They were up big, and then they blew the lead. And there's got to be some sort of residue to that one. You're Georgia State. You're traveling to Charlotte after a tough home loss to Louisiana Lafayette. Georgia State has the freshman quarterback, and it was very successful to start. They've got some solid running backs. Ran for over 200 yards in that game against a good Louisiana defense. So there were some signs there from Georgia State, but to me, you're traveling on the road for a non-conference game after a tough loss in a home conference game. Problem comes from Charlotte. They've been off 2 weeks. They were supposed to play last week against North Carolina, but they had COVID issues. The offensive line, they didn't have enough offensive linemen to practice or to play. And Charlotte practiced with 5 offensive linemen on Friday. There's still some results that are outstanding as of the taping of this on Wednesday night, so we don't know. This might be a game that goes by the wayside, too, if some of them don't improve. I don't know if I can necessarily play either side in this one. As I said, Georgia State should have some sort of hangover, but if Charlotte's not going to have a ton of offensive linemen, that's not going to help them either. There's also the question of quarterback. Chris Reynolds is their starter. He's listed as questionable. I don't know if I can believe that. Dom Schaffner would start. I don't hate Dom Schaffner. Didn't put up bad stats, in his time so far. But to me, there's a lot of question marks in this one. And as I say frequently for those who are new, Vegas has to put odds out on everything. We do not have to bet on everything.
MidMajor Matt, next one up here. We got ACC action, Florida State at Miami. Talking about good atmospheres, Matt. This is a unique scenario where when Florida State plays at the University of Miami, talk about good tailgating. It is a wild atmosphere there at Hard Rock Stadium. Any South Floridian that's been to this game would agree with me. But talking about football on the field here, Matt, we got minus 10.5 to a minus 11.5 for the Hurricanes, laying at home, 54 being the total, FSU versus Miami.
Last year, Miami won 27-10 in this game on the road. Teams combined for 71 rushing yards, but of course, throw everything out because you've got brand new coach in Florida State side. You've got the brand new offense on the Miami side. We'll start out with the Seminoles. They have had 2 weeks off since that 16-13 Georgia Tech loss. The offense was pretty bad. I'm not a huge James Blackman fan when it comes to running that offense because he by the way, he also looks like he's still a freshman. He's all skin and bones when it comes to quarterback. And, I'm worried about him behind that offensive line staying upright. We know the biggest thing involving this game is Mike Norvell's coaching remotely. He has COVID, and you get a little bit of an experience from that when you look at Liberty last year when they had Hugh Freeze, who had the back problem, and he was coaching from his hospital bed. Of course, it was up in the top of the stadium, and it's probably a little different. But talking to the Liberty players and the people who covered that team, the players had a bit of a disconnect when it came to having Hugh Freeze on the sideline and having him laid up in a hospital bed in the suite up at the top of the stadium. Of course, Mike Norvell probably won't be in the stadium, but he'll be connected remotely. So now you've got the offensive coordinator who's going to take over calling plays and being the coach on the sideline, and they're kind of readjusting roles a little bit. If you look at that Georgia Tech game, they played against a dual threat guy in that freshman Jeff Sims, 277 passing with a touchdown, 2 interceptions, and also rushed for 64 yards. And then you got Miami, the big spotlight game. They beat Louisville on the road 47-34. They already have the win over UAB 31-14. Miami's defense is a bit of a worry. There is still some talent there, but they still are trying to overcome the loss of the linebackers. I love their front guys. Quincy Roche, of course, I was a Temple fan. He was at Temple. He was the AAC Defensive Player of the Year. And so now he's on Miami. They should get constant pressure. The other big thing for Miami here is they've got a kicker. Borregales, the kid who comes over from FIU, is really good, and that makes a difference for a Miami team that's going to score a lot of points and constantly be in the red zone. To me, though, rivalry games, I don't want to necessarily lay the 11. So to me, if I look at anything at the first half here, I think Miami comes out fast. I think Florida State has to adjust to having a coach on a headset wherever the heck he's going to be. It's an offense that doesn't have a lot of confidence. It's a defense that got gashed a little bit. Miami's going to start fast. So carrying over confidence from Louisville, I like Miami in the first half of this one.
All right, MidMajor Matt. We'll now talk MidMajor Matt's alma mater here, Syracuse Orange hosting the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, with the Yellow Jackets laying 7 in the hook or 8 on the road, 52.5 being the total in this one.
I mean, it's sad. It's just sad. Syracuse is terrible. They hired an offensive head coach in Dino Babers. He brings over Sterling Gilbert, and they've worked together. They're supposed to have a lot of confidence together. And this offense hasn't worked. And it's too predictable. The offensive line's terrible. Tommy DeVito has no time, and they really only have one good wide receiver in Taj Harris. He's dropped the ball occasionally. They've had some drops. There's a lot to not like it. And not only that, they go at a fast pace, which doesn't help the defense. The defense has been great. Look at the first halves of these games with the 3-3-5. A lot of teams don't play 3-3-5s. So there is some adjustment when it comes to that sort of thing. Offensively, Syracuse is averaging 8 points per game. They're averaging 59.5 rush yards, 127 passing yards per game. They lost 21-10 to Pittsburgh last week. They lost 31-6 to UNC. And in both games, they were in it in halftime. And the defense did what they were supposed to, but then they eventually ran out of gas and they lost the game. Syracuse has been a home underdog of 7.5 to 10 points just 5 times since 1992. This is a crazy thing. It's their first home game of the season. Of course, there won't be any fans there. On the Georgia Tech side, you have to wonder what the residue is coming off a 49-21 loss to UCF at home, in which UCF just ran up and down the field, moved up and down and things like that. They also have the win over Florida State 16-13. I like Jeff Collins. I like the staff that he's put together. They're slowly getting away from the triple option. So, and as we talked about, Jeff Sims runs this offense pretty well. To me, There's a part of me that really wants to take Syracuse +8, saying they can't be that bad. They're home. They've got to do it. But to me, and once again, we're going to go to the first half. I think this is a first half under. The 3-3-5 will take some time to get used to for Georgia Tech. Syracuse's offense isn't very good. Georgia Tech's defense is not great, but it seems like everybody is slowing down Syracuse. By the way, these two teams are in the same conference, the ACC. They haven't played since 2013. Syracuse lost that game 56-0 in Atlanta. To me, another first half potential play here. I'm looking at the under in the first half and hoping that Georgia Tech takes some time to get used to that 3-3-5.
He's MidMajor Matt, obviously knows his stuff. He's 10-4 his last 14 college football plays as well. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. You can get his full season package there. College football action, do a 7-day, 3-day all access. It's all available. Sportsmemo.com. At MidMajor Matt on Twitter. We got Louisville at Pittsburgh up next. 401, 402, the rotation numbers. Noon kick here. -3. That's Pittsburgh laying at home. 55.5 being the total, Matt.
Well, once again, these two teams are in the ACC. They haven't met since 2015, which just shows how weird the rotations are in this conference. Of course, usually there are divisions. This year, there's no divisions because of what's going on. There's the Atlantic and the Coastal, and Pittsburgh's in the Coastal, and Louisville's in the Atlantic. Louisville last week lost to Miami in that game, 47-34. I wasn't that impressed with Louisville. The offense looked modestly pedestrian. Cunningham didn't have a great game, and the defense just basically let them do whatever they want. They did beat Western Kentucky 35-21. I expect a better effort from their offense, but they're going up against one of the best defenses in the country. We talked about Pittsburgh. They've allowed 10 points so far. They beat Syracuse 21-10. They beat Austin Peay 55-0 in a running clock game, and they've allowed just 54 yards rushing on 56 carries. And to me, that's a key for Louisville, is that they've got to be able to get Javian Hawkins and Tutu Atwell and Des Fitzpatrick, their big three skill position guys. They've got to get them going. And if you can't get Hawkins going at all, then it slows things down, puts more pressure on the quarterback. The big problem with Pittsburgh is offensively, they're just not paying off their drives. There's a lot of field goals. But Alex Kessman last week wasn't even very good. Pittsburgh should have probably put up some more points, but Kessman missed 3 field goals. 2 of them was his fault, and one of them, the holder dropped the snap. I really wish I could trust Pittsburgh in this situation. If Pittsburgh can drag Louisville out, this is kind of a I'll give you what I think, but you decide. If you think that Louisville's offense is going to overpower Pittsburgh's defense, then you take Louisville plus the points, and they win this game rather easily. But if you think that this is going to be a slugfest and Pittsburgh's going to slow the game down and they're going to drag Louisville out and they're going to score and they're going to pay off some of these long drives, then you take Pittsburgh. It could also be a whatever it is. Correlated bet. Thank you. You think Louisville's going to win, you're taking the over. If you think Pittsburgh's going to win, you're taking the under. Because once again, Pittsburgh's not winning a shootout, and Louisville's probably not winning a defensive battle here. So it's really up to you as to what you've seen so far these first 2 weeks. If you believe in Pittsburgh, you take the home team in the under. If you believe in the road team, you take them in the over.
Good breakdown, Matt. Not only on the field, but the conference alignment here. And just real quick, do you know the difference between Coastal and Atlantic? Because they kind of sound alike. It's not like East and West or North and South there. How did they split that up?
Well, the Atlantic is better. It's where Clemson is. It's where Florida State was. That's where Syracuse, Wake Forest is. There's no real rhyme or reason. The Virginia schools are both in the Coastal. Duke's in the Coastal. North Carolina's in the Coastal. For some reason, Pittsburgh's in the Coastal, but I guess they don't really belong either place. So that's kind of the layout. But once again, because of what's going on this year, there are no divisions. I don't know if that's a permanent thing, but it's definitely for this year. The top 2 teams will make the ACC championship, not the top 1 team in each division. And
do they all play each other?
No.
What if 3 teams end up undefeated?
I mean, good luck, Commissioner Swafford in his last season as commissioner of the ACC. I'm sure there's tiebreakers, but I just don't know what they are off the top of my head.
Wow, interesting, Matt. So we'll get back to the betting analysis here, which is why most people listen and click the link. 7:30 Eastern kick here. Tennessee at South Carolina in the SEC. We're seeing the Vols -3 in the hook, road favorites, 44 the total in this one, Matt.
So I'm clearly the wrong person to ask for this one. I'll give you some information, but I'm sure you can provide more since you're the SEC guy. For the most part, outside of like Vanderbilt, I skip over the SEC because there are better handicappers than I am that take care of this conference. Occasionally I'll jump in on some things. When you look at Tennessee, 8 returning starters on offense, 8 returning starters on defense, 2 returning specialists, but 3 of their 4 top wide receivers are gone. Neither of their 2 top running backs had that much success last year, but they've got Jared Guartanamo or whatever it is at quarterback. And I like him. He's not bad. They won this game last year 41-21 as a 4-point home dog. Both teams found some success through the air, but there's a lot of question marks for South Carolina. They return all these starters. I like the Colin Hill kid at quarterback. He comes over from Colorado State. Colorado State last year beat Arkansas. And he followed Mike Bobo, and we know Mike Bobo puts together some solid offenses. So, there's reason to be optimistic about South Carolina. You probably want Colin Hill to cut down on the interceptions a little bit. That was an issue of his throughout college. Muschamp is 7-1 against the Volunteers, although 7 of the 8 meetings were decided by 6 points or less. There's a couple of key injuries in this one. Marshawn Lloyd, the 4-star running back, tore his ACL in the offseason. He was expected to be the number 1 running back for South Carolina. Jamar Brown, who is a dime linebacker, is questionable. He's been dealing with some injuries. Face value here with 25% attendance. I feel like South Carolina is not a bad look here, but once again, I'm not the guy to ask for this sort of thing. But to me, I like the intrigue of Mike Bobo. I like the intrigue of Colin Hill. If South Carolina's defense is any good, maybe they stand up to a Tennessee offense. Maybe it's an under too, because with a lot of starters returning on defense and some time that these two sides are going to have to figure things out a little bit. I'm interested in what you have to say in this game.
Yeah, Matt, first one question. Muschamp 7-1 against the Vols. Does that include his time at Florida?
I'm guessing it does. Yes, I found it in one of the game notes in South Carolina's game notes, because when I don't know a lot about a team, I go to their game notes. Yeah,
no, that's a very interesting stat there. I mean, you bring up the fact of Colin Hill, Bobo coming over from Colorado State. And there's an interesting kind of, I guess, handicapping dynamic of new systems and the quarterback having to learn a new system this offseason, especially being really a fade for me. And you're not going to get that here with South Carolina, even though it's a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator. And by the way, the new quarterback beat out the incumbent quarterback, which is an interesting kind of scenario in itself. And I hope it doesn't kind of break up their locker room there. And I haven't read anything that it would. And I mean, I hope if you're looking to bet on South Carolina, that makes me look towards the home dog here, catching 3 in the hook now, especially because almost everybody that I've heard, and it looks like from ticket count, a lot of the tickets here are on Tennessee. So it's kind of like South Carolina's the forgotten one. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for a sports bettor, especially when it's a home dog here. But there is a lot of negatives towards South Carolina, and any South Carolina fan out there will tell you, they likely have one of, if not the best defensive coordinators in the country. The problem is he's their head coach, and Will Muschamp. He really hasn't been able to put it all together as the head coach. He's a heck of a defensive coordinator, and you talk about their defense. I would expect him to have a pretty decent defense here against Tennessee, who's catching all these tickets. I would actually look to be on the dog here, Matt.
I mean, it all sounds really good. It's from a lot of the stuff that I read. I mean, South Carolina is not great. I should have gone back and looked. They just put out the SEC, the rundown. I think Tennessee's picked 3rd in the East, and then South Carolina is closer to the bottom. But, I mean, to me, it seems like South Carolina could be a live dog in this one.
All right, Matt. Well, we got 2 games left here, guys. Then we'll bring in Oskheim Sports for his first appearance on the Sports Memo podcast. But next game up here in the Big 12, Kansas at Baylor. We're seeing the Baylor Bears -17, -17.5 at home, 62 being the total in Waco, Matt.
On face value, you want to take Baylor. I mean, it's Kansas. I mean, Kansas is terrible. Last year, Baylor won this game 61-6. They were up 34 at halftime. But here's the thing. So we'll start out with the Jayhawks. 2 weeks ago, they lose at home 38-23 to Coastal Carolina. The irony is there was a lot of talk from people like Puka Williams. We want to get revenge on Coastal Carolina. It's ridiculous to hear from a Power 5 school. So they actually got up for this game and were really excited for this game, and Coastal Carolina punched him in the mouth. They win 38-23 over the Jayhawks. It looks like Puka Williams is going to play, and it looks like Thomas McVitie, the other quarterback, is going to be available. Him and Kendrick were the quarterbacks. I mean, it didn't really make a difference. Both of them weren't very good. But you look at Kansas, they're actually 7-3-1 against the spread the last 11 games on the road. So they have been a decent cover on the road. They've played a game, too, and they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. Throw all that out, though, when it comes to Baylor. You've got a Baylor team that's had 3 opportunities to start their season. They have not been able to. Last week, the controversy involving the Houston game where they got postponed, I think, 24, 48 hours beforehand? I think Baylor was one of the games on my list here on our segment, and we talked about it. Baylor has so much new. Aranda's new. The offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, all new. There's a lot of starters back. Charlie Brewer's back and things like that, but they've been dealing with their own COVID stuff. And there's just so many question marks on the Baylor side, but there's literally nothing in me right now that could say, look, in a lot of situations, I would take the other team, the underdog, because they've played a game, but it's Kansas. I can't back Kansas. I can't back Baylor. Maybe this is a live situation. Maybe Kansas gets up early because they have that experience. You get a cheaper number on Baylor, and you bet the home team. I don't know. There's literally no reason to bet Baylor. And the total, I can't bet the total either because I don't know what to expect from Baylor, and I don't expect them to be successful that first couple of drives because they're learning a new system. They've had to start and stop, and Kansas, who knows what they're going to add. So I know people are going to be like, oh, you're being wishy-washy, but I can't play anything here because there's just so many question marks on Baylor.
Well, MidMajor Matt, we don't have to bet that one. We got Troy BYU for the final game of this segment, and something college football is doing here. Maybe it's BYU, maybe it's the NCAA. I'm not really sure, but it is a 10:15 Eastern kick here, so we get a little bit of a degenerate special feel with the Troy Trojans at the BYU Cougars. We're seeing BYU minus 14, 61 the total. Not saying you got to go on record with a side or a total here, Matt. But for the guy out there that's either up on the Saturday or down looking to come back, he needs some action, not betting too much. Don't want to ever bet more than you can afford to lose, guys. But if you need some action in the Degenerate Special on ESPN, 10:15 Eastern, Matt, what are you telling them to do?
Well, I'm telling you to wait. First off, it is Wednesday night. When it comes to BYU, they're still dealing with positive COVID tests and contact tracing. Kalani Satake mentioned no one's rolled out yet for Saturday, but there are still players quarantined. And as a result of the contact tracing, we don't know. He doesn't even know who's going to be cleared for the game. So remember, this is a BYU team that was supposed to play Army, and BYU had plenty of COVID issues, and they canceled the game or postponed the game. I don't remember if they actually moved it or not. So, look, on the field, BYU is a very spectacular team. Zach Wilson, the offense was everything we expected them to be. They beat Navy 55-3, but that was 19 days ago as of Saturday. So this is a team that has had some ins and outs when it comes to practice. The coach talked about, look, we've had to break up into groups. We've had to have small groups not practicing. There's just so many question marks when it comes to BYU. So then you're thinking, okay, well, what about Troy? Troy gets the win last week, 47-14. They racked up over 500 yards almost. They forced 3 turnovers. They looked amazing. The big question with them was Gunnar Watson. How good would he be, replacing, Caleb Barker at quarterback? He looked really good. He's got B.J. Smith. He's got Billingsley. He's got some wide receivers who are really good. There's a lot of things to like about Troy. The question is, are they big enough to handle a BYU team? You look at some of the teams that have played them, and they go out there and they get worn down in that second half because of the elevation, because of the fact that BYU literally has 27-year-old kids out there because of the missions and things like that. Like, they're bigger and they're more and they're stronger and they're more seasoned and veteran. I like Troy's skill position, guys. I would actually lean to Troy. You could also lean to Troy now and hope that there's some BYU guys who don't play, and then your 14 and a half, whatever it is some value, because if it comes out that so-and-so's not playing, the number might go down. The other thing to consider here is Troy's offensive coordinator is Ryan Pugh. He was the offensive line coach for BYU in 2018. So it's a little thing. It's a little tiny thing that can help because some of those kids are probably still there. So it's a wait and see situation, Drew. And I know no one wants to do it on a Wednesday night, but we still have to find out what the deal is with some of these kids at BYU who have COVID. Hell, the way things are going, this game might even get postponed too. Who knows? So I lean to Troy. If you want to jump in now, you'll probably get the best number. You could also wait and see if anybody big from BYU is not playing, or heck, you could even wait and see if the game's still playing. With regards to the over-under, I mean, once again, it's a correlated situation. I think Troy wins a shootout, and I think BYU wins a lower-scoring game because we know how BYU grinds out drives. They don't want to go 4 plays. They want to go 18 plays. So you like BYU, you like the under, you like Troy, you like the over, because I don't see Troy winning a 27, 21 type game.
Yeah, great breakdown. I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think Troy was very impressive over Middle Tennessee State, and I actually lost betting against them. And BYU, the same impressiveness so far this season. But how much of that was kind of just the spot and national television, things of that nature. Now you're asking them to win by 2 touchdowns against a very talented Troy team. So fascinating handicap and a great degenerate special to end the Saturday. But Mid-Major Matt, guys, that does it for the FBS. We got one more.
Yeah, well, are we gonna touch real quick on the FCS games? It's the other reason why they tune into me, huh?
Matt, I'm getting there. I was going to say, guys, we're at the end of the FBS versus FBS for this segment. We will bring in Oskeem Sports and then Rob Vino, if you're listening on the podcast, to finish off the college football every game on the board. So if your book only offers FBS versus FBS, this might be a good tune out for you. But I would suggest listening to what Mid-Major Matt has to say about the FCS matchups on the college football board, because there is money to be made out there and there are lower limits. And a lot of times, guys, when there's lower limits offered by the sports books, they're offering lower limits for a reason. And hopefully Mid-Major Matt here can put us towards the right sides and break down these FCS games and maybe give us a best bet. So Mid-Major Matt, have at the FCS games, buddy.
All right, so with the lines are not out widely, there is only DraftKings Sportsbook has it, and then there is another sportsbook that does not take U.S. customers anymore that has it. And as Drew said, flimsy lines, one bet moves the line, so you either wait for a better number or you jump in now. All right, so there's 5 games. 3 of them involve FBS schools. 2 of them do not. We'll go real quick here. Campbell at App State. App State's about a 5-touchdown favorite. Totals around 51.5 or so. Campbell's been good to me so far. Campbell last week, last Friday, they cover the spread here. Now, they didn't play well defensively against Coastal. They lost the game 43-21, but Campbell's got a competent offense here, which is what you ask for in situations like this. And then they lost 27-26 at Georgia Southern the Saturday before. I really like Campbell. My concern here is this. This is the 3rd straight FBS game, and we know the beating that an FCS school takes in this situation. Quite often when, in a normal season, an FCS school will play 2 at most, and mostly it's for the paychecks here. Campbell is playing a bunch. They've got Wake Forest still to go as they play this schedule here and try and get some money and then decide whether or not they're going to play in the spring. So, look, the big number here is nice potentially at 35, but I have a feeling you're holding on for dear life because Campbell's playing their 3rd straight FBS school. Appalachian State's not going to be thrilled. They lose 17-7 last week at Marshall. They beat Charlotte 35-20. Next game is a game against Lafayette, but there's a week off, so App State should be focused in this one. App State for just 3 times, all time since transitioning to FBS in 2014, failed to rush for 100 yards last week. It's only happened 3 times, and last week was one of those 3 times. They failed to rush for 100 yards. That'll change. Through 2 games, the Mountaineers lead the nation in defended passes. They have 15 breakups and 3 interceptions. They have 4 turnovers inside the opponent's 20-yard line in 8 quarters of play, too, so they could be so much better. Face value, I like Campbell, but I'm not going to jump to the window. I'm not going to leap to the window unless it goes up more because I'm just concerned about a team like this playing their 3rd straight FBS game. Did you watch any of that ASU Marshall game, or were you at all interested in that game?
Yeah, unfortunately, I bet App State, and watching that offense, I believe it was the first time since App State became Division I that they didn't score at least 10 points. Not sure on that stat, but either way, I am not looking at laying 5 touchdowns with App State after watching that offense. So I'm not involved, but I wouldn't be laying it with App State, Matt.
Could be an over here too. Campbell's defense concerned me, and by the 3rd or 4th quarter after playing App State, maybe this thing starts loosening up a bit. Campbell can score, but I think probably the better play might be the over in this game. Favorite of the podcast, Houston Baptist at Louisiana Tech. You know how much we love the Houston Baptist team here on this podcast.
Well, we also love Skip Holtz, Matt.
We do love Skip Holtz. I do have a fondness for Skip Holtz, but Houston Baptist, if you have not watched so far this year, and by the way, the spread is Louisiana Tech around 23.5 point favorite. Total is 68.5. It's a really high total. Houston Baptist lost 2 weeks ago to Texas Tech 35-33. They nearly pulled off the upset. Of course, I had the over in that game. It fell just short. And then I had Houston Baptist in week 1, and that didn't cover either because they missed a couple field goals, but they fell 57-31 at North Texas. back on September 5th. So you're saying to me, well, Matt, Houston Baptist is playing their third straight FBS game, but they have the week off. And I like that. I like the fact that they have the week off. Their quarterback, and by the way, if you play DFS and this shows up, play this guy. Their quarterback's name is Bailey Zappa. He's thrown for 1,047 yards on 69 of 111 passes for 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's only been sacked 4 times against 2 FBS opponents. Sure, he's thrown for over 1,000 yards in 2 games so far against FBS teams. You look at Louisiana Tech last week, they win the road game against Southern Miss, and they play at BYU next. So what's the focus level going to be for a game against Houston Baptist? The 2 quarterbacks that Louisiana Tech used, they threw for 4 touchdowns. They had an interception. They had almost 400 yards of offense. They looked good. Skip Holtz, after the game, talked about how he did not have his top 4 linebackers, also played a true freshman at corner. Well, if that's the case, Houston Baptist is going to pick him apart. To me, I can't decide if I like Houston Baptist more or the over more. I think I'm going to wait and see, and maybe I can milk another point or 2 out of either of those things. I think Houston Baptist can keep this close, especially if Louisiana Tech doesn't take them seriously. I also think the over is in play because Houston Baptist is just going to throw it a lot, and they're just going to keep throwing it, and they're going to move the ball up and down the field. And even if they don't, it's going to be some quick drives. I don't know if you were at all involved in Louisiana Tech or Skip Holtz last week.
Yeah, I mean, I like Louisiana Tech overall and looking to bet on Skip Holtz more so than fade him. So I don't know too much about Houston Baptist, MidMajor Matt, but we are running up against it time-wise. Guys, MidMajor Matt, 10-4 his last 14 college football plays. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. MidMajor Matt, I'll throw it back over to you just to rattle them off here.
All right, Stephen F. Austin against SMU. SMU was really good last week. Thank God they let the offense breathe and let them eat. They went 65-35 over North Texas. They beat Texas State 31-24. They've got Memphis next week, so that's a big conference game. So if you're going to play SMU, you play them in the first half. It's their first home game of the year. They're going to be really excited. Stephen F. Austin lost 24-10 at UTSA. They lost 24-14 at UTEP. They've got a decent defense. It's just they played 2 really crappy opponents. Their offense is really slow and methodical. So to me, you potentially look at the under, but I think SMU in the first half is worth a look as they try and run away and hide and then get their backup some play in the 3rd and 4th quarters.
All right, MidMajor Matt, you want to hit the last 2 FCS games real quick?
I'll do it real quick. So Eastern Kentucky's at the Citadel. There'll be 3,081 fans in this one, including 500 cadets. Citadel got outclassed in both of their games, 49-0 Clemson, 27-6 at South Florida. It's the A-backs. I was talking to somebody who covers the Citadel. The fact that they don't have good A-backs is not helping their triple option. Eastern Kentucky, though, lost 2 weeks ago to West Virginia, 56-10, 59-0 to Marshall. This could be an under here. The total should be around 48.5, but I would wait. And then Missouri State, Central Arkansas. Bobby Petrino is coaching at Missouri State. They lost 48-0 to Oklahoma 2 weeks ago. They've got just 3 games on their schedule. They're actually playing a home and home against Central Arkansas. Their redshirt freshman quarterback looked okay against Oklahoma, but he did get injured, so I would like to see the status of him before I decide anything. They also have an offensive line that gave up only 4 sacks to Oklahoma. That's not bad for an FCS line, offensive line, to give 4 sacks to Oklahoma. Central Arkansas has been off since the 3rd of September when they lost 45-35 UAB. They beat Austin Peay in that opener 24-17. They also play at North Dakota State next week. That's a really big game. Braylon Smith, who we had a lot of expectations for, just hasn't looked great so far this season. Central Arkansas is the better team, but I need to see the status of the Missouri State quarterback before I play this game.
Bringing it. MidMajor Matt on Twitter at MidMajor Matt. He's also 10-4, guys, in his last 14 college football plays. Check him out, sportsmemo.com. 3-day, 7-day, full season, all up there. Sportsmemo.com. MidMajor Matt, you want to throw out anything before we shut this down?
So the play here is probably Miami in the first half. I know you're going to try and pin me down to a best bet, and to the guy who is asking about Liberty, I believe that's in Jeff Oskheim's group. So he will, or no, actually that's Rob Vino. So Rob Vino took care of that one. So unfortunately, Liberty's playing a team of the first game, and we don't know much about what Butch Davis is going to bring. I did like what Malik Willis did for Liberty's offense last week, and we know that's going to get better. So it'll be an interesting game to watch this weekend.
All right, MidMajor Matt, thank you. Good stuff as always, guys. We will be right back with the next section of College Football Every Game on the Board podcast.